Alright guys, this is Will from NC Alarms here, and today I'm going to be showing you guys another tutorial with Verifier Tools. And today we're going to start fresh since I now actually have a notifier panel to do some programming with. And I'm going to show you guys the basic steps in which you can take to get started with a basic version of Verifier Tools. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize this window so that you don't have to see all that garbage on the screen. And what I'm going to do, now that you can see Verifier Tools, hopefully, is I'm going to start a new database. This is the first thing you're going to see if you're launching the same version of Verifier Tools that I have. This is 5.71. This is the latest unlicensed version. I have another version that I use for work, but I'm going to be doing a demonstration on this particular one because it's the type of verifier tools that you would be able to obtain yourself, given that you have the proper resources. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select to start a new database, and I'm going to start it for NFS2640. Since, for those of you who don't know, that is the panel that I have. You haven't seen it in a while because I haven't done much with it, but I decided today would be a pretty good day to start making a video with it. So we're going to start a new database, and we're going to select a database version. I'm going to select 12, even though my panel's version is 19, but you see I don't have 19 there. So we're going to take a special step in order to obtain the ability to work on firmware version 19. So you're not going to be able to do anything because I have a version 19 panel. I'm not going to be able to do everything that I'd like to do in the programming software. Some of it I will have to do through the keypad, but it's very minute stuff like knack programming. And that stuff can be easily done through the panel interface. So let's go ahead and click OK. And I have it set up as standalone, by the way, as you can see there. Let's go ahead and click OK. And what's going to come up is our basic programming screen, NTS runtime. Well, I guess maximize, minimize does the same thing here. So you'll notice this is what a blank program looks like for Verifier Tools. You have General 1, General 2, active SLC loops, special functions, all this other stuff. What we're going to do is we're going to basically type in a label, and I'm going to type in blank label, and that's all I'm going to do for right now. I'm going to hit the program button, and you'll see that my databases file comes up. Now you can see I have a lot of databases here. Those are for various different things that I've been experimenting with Verifier Tools. But before you do anything, you have to save this. You have to be able to hit the program button and save. Now in order to save, you first have to create a file name. So we're going to call this demonstration, if I can type. Alright? And I'm going to save that. Now, you'll see selected file does not exist. Do you want it to be created? Yes. Alright, so now I have demonstration set up and saved in the program. So what I'm going to do now is, since I'm working on a laptop, I'm going to unplug my laptop from its source of power so that I don't cause any issues with the panel. And I'm going to plug in, since I have a 2640, I'm going to plug in the USB. Now what this is going to do is this is going to allow me to upload from the panel. Upload means you're taking the program from the panel. So now I'm going to go to panel, and I'm going to click new session. And I'm going to click local network. And you can see over here in my edit session, NFS2640 has popped up, and I now have the upload download option. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to upload from node. And before I do that, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to right click, or actually I'm going to go down here and I'm going to right click, left click, then right click, then click login, and I'm going to enter the programming master password for my panel, which is 5 zeros for me. And you can see it accepted that. So now I've got an hourglass and it's taking a moment, but I'm going to click upload from node. And I'm going to use the current database, which, as you can see, I have it saved as demonstration. You have to save it before you can use the current database. and then I'm going to click Upload. Node 0 already exists in target database. Do you wish to overwrite? Yes, I do. And now we just wait for this to drag everything out of the panel. Now I already have a program in the panel, so you're going to see the panel banner, it'll show up as an address, and you've got some other various things that I've programmed in there, but we'll go over that once we've grabbed the program from the panel. Now I'm using the same USB cable that you would use if you were to use a Firelight panel. A Firelight MS9200 UDLS uses this type of USB. It's like a printer cable. All right, now you can see we can disconnect the panel now that, and we can reconnect the charger because my laptop lives on the charger. But now we can unplug the panel's USB and we can get to work. So right now this has an address. I'm going to change this to say Notifier Fire Systems. LED blink. Now you'll notice this says 15. That means that the LED blinks for every 15th time it's been pulled. The reason why I do that is because I only have one pull station on the system, so it would get rather difficult to tell whether it was solid or pulling if I had that set for blink 1. Or I can set it for blink 0 and it doesn't blink at all, but it is pulling. So that's just a neat little feature that that Notifier allows you to adjust. The all systems normal message, that's pretty basic. You pretty much can figure out what that means. Network style, style 4 and style 7, those are just two different wiring styles for networks. You don't need to get into that unless you have a network of Notifier panels that are connected over twisted pair or over fiber optic. Timers. Now, auto silence, the minimum you can do is 10 minutes, so I have it enabled for 10 minutes. I don't have silence inhibit enabled because that just makes it impossible for me to silence the panel after a given time. And alarm verification, I have that set for 30 seconds, but I don't really use it. Trouble reminder options, I have it set for 0. Now, if you have it set for anything other than 0, it will pretty much obnoxiously annoy you. So by default, this is set on 2, like that. If you want the panel's piezo not to beep every single minute, you have to set this on 1 or 0. 1 is a 24-hour reminder, and 0 is no trouble reminder. I have it set for no trouble reminder because I don't need to be reminded because I obsessively try and fix my troubles. For United States NFPA requirements, you should probably have it set on 1, but I'm going to keep mine set on 0. Let's move over to General 2. We can set the security relay for alarm, and we can set the supervisory trouble or relay for alarm if we need additional alarm relays, and we are not using the supervisory or security functions when connected to another panel or to a dialer. DCC participation, you don't need that, and you will, however, need to make sure that your power supply charger is enabled if you have one and if you have batteries. But if you don't have batteries and you want to do the battery hack, you need to disable this first. There's no way to disable this through the panel's display. You're going to get a charger fail if you try to do the battery hack on a Notifier panel without turning this off. If you have over 26 amp hours, you need to set it for greater than 26 amp hour because that provides a that lets the panel know that it can allow a little bit more current to go through the charging port or the charging cable for the batteries. ACS terminal mode, keep that on 7 bits. You won't need 8 bits for really anything. 9600 baud for the printer. Keep it at 9600. That's pretty standard. That's the quickest transfer rate for data information to a thermal printer. Active SLC loops. Now notice this didn't pick up that I have SLC loop 2 installed, but I do have loop 2 installed, so I'm going to click that, and I'm also going to click program. Style 4 is class B. Style 6 is class A. So if you have returns going to the panel for your SLC loops, you need to have style 6 enabled. All right, these are where we get into special functions. Pre-signal delay time, that's pretty generic. You hit a detector, it has the panel and alarm for about 3 minutes if you have it set for 3 minutes. You can set it for 1 minute. Positive alarm sequence is very similar. I'm not entirely sure what the difference between the two is, but I'm not going to enable this, but I'm going to keep that set for 1 minute. Special functions 1 through 4, these are just various different output special functions that I don't even use. I try to avoid using those if I can, but these are basically, these special functions are as if it's as if the panel had some dip switches like a remote field power supply, FCPS booster panel. Very similar functions to these four carry out. In fact, that's pretty much what these are. Now these time control functions are really neat. You can set sensitivity levels to adjust throughout the day and throughout the week as you wish to do so for your business if you have a notifier panel, but there's no need to do that in a residential facility. Special functions 2, this is where you set your signal code. I'm going to keep mine set on March time, but if you have synchronized strobes of any kind with the NFS 2640, you have system sensor, Gentex, and Wheelock. If you have a regular NFS 640, chances are you're connected through a NUP cable. And if you don't know what that is, you need to do some research. You don't have a USB option on regular NFS devices other than the NFS 320. But you'll also only get system sensor synchronization with the regular NFS 640. Gentex and Wheelock are complementary of the NFS 2640, which is why I was grateful that this actually happened to be an NFS 2640. Holiday list, that's basically a function that goes hand in hand with special functions 5 and 6. The holiday function, however, acts as if it's an extended weekend per se. You can set a given day where, let's say Christmas, for example. Let's say you have lower sensitivities throughout the day in your building because you're doing some woodworking in the building. But Christmas is on a Wednesday. You don't want the sensitivity to be lower when nobody's working, so you can have the notifier system raise the sensitivity on holidays, which is nice that they add that little holiday list in. And function 9 is pre-alarm. You get alert or action. That's mostly for the suppression function of the NFS 2640. Now ACS, this is very important. If you have an ACM24AT or like annunciator, or if you have an AMG1 like I have, you need to pay attention. Now anything with letters is the factory presets, for the notifier annunciator maps. Now you can see I have ACS2. You can see that's a button because 1 is a user programmed map, which I will set in point programming later, and I'll show you guys how that works, maybe in a separate video if this one gets to be too long. But you can see that this is set for A, and A is 8 system points being like acknowledge, trouble, silence, reset, control, NAC1, stuff like that. 8 system points and zones 1 through 56. You have to set that for address 1 if you are using an AMG1. You have to use ACS1 because it automatically assumes address 1 as the AMG, because the way the AMG works is it goes through the annunciator bus. I had a friend of mine try it on their NFS 320, and the AMG did not respond to the 320. So even though it's an annunciator, the 320 does not support the AMG one, unfortunately, for those of you who are interested in voice evacuation but have a notifier NFS 320. So I apologize for that poor news, but I also have ACS2 installed because for those of you who have seen my notifier panel before, you'll know that I have a ACM24AT, an ACM24AT installed right next to the display on my fire panel. And I use that as disable switches and control switches, and I'll show you guys how I program that in a little bit. But make sure you set this up however it is that you would like. Since we're on this subject of ACS, I'm going to jump over to ACS2 by clicking the button. And you can see that it pulls up user map 1, which is what it's programmed for, and I have plenty of user maps that I can program for various different ACMs. And you can see down here that these are all of the neat little programming things that I have done. So you can see that the first 4 are pretty basic system functions: acknowledge, silence, reset, and drill. I programmed those as monitor/control, and those are system points. Zone 0, as you can see, zone 0 for switch 5 is set as enable disable. Zone 0 is the general alarm zone. Anything that trips zone 0, all the NACs go off. So I set this as a disable for my NACs because I don't have access to the NACs through Verifier Tools. If I go over to bell circuit points, you can see that it doesn't pick up the bell circuits because the firmware on my NFS 2640 is too new for this software to recognize the bell circuits. I have version 19. The latest, I believe, is 26. So I'm not sure how many other functions don't function properly in Verifier Tools with 26, but I know that bell circuits don't work right in 19. And it doesn't always pick up the devices on the SLC either. I can pretty much guarantee you that it didn't pick up device 1 on my second loop because it didn't pick up the loop 2 being enabled when it picked up the panel program when we uploaded. So there are a few things that it just kind of misses out on when you upload, and you may have to upload a few times to get those extra settings. I don't have any detectors installed, so that's not a problem there. Anyway, back to ACS maps. So you can see that there are a lot more points than 24 on this particular map. You can see it goes up to 64 because I believe that's the largest size individual ACM enunciator that you can have, is 64 point. I got the 24 point because it has switches on it, and I wanted switches for enable, disable, and what have you. So you can see that in order to program this, you can see you have your ACS point, which is 1. That means it's the first switch or the first LED on the enunciator. So you choose point 1 if you want switch 1 to perform a function. I have it for global acknowledge. Same thing here, alarm silence, system reset, drill. I did the same thing there. Now I can go over here and I can click enable, disable, or monitor control. Monitor/control will selectively turn the output or input on or off. Enable, disable will enable and disable, as it suggests, the device or zone that you have chosen to enable/disable, or that you've programmed into that particular map. I'm going to keep this one on enable and disable. So 0.5 is enable, disable. And yeah, that's pretty much how that goes. It's pretty basic to pick up, and you can see the type here. The type is just for what type of point you want to enable or disable. I couldn't do bell circuit points individually because it doesn't pick up the NACs when I upload, so I had to get creative and I had to disable the general alarm zone, and that hits all my NACs for me. So I suppose that's pretty nice. Now the thing with enable and disable is it doesn't cut off power to the circuit. All it does is it kind of isolates it from the program. So if you hit a pull station, there's still power going to the NAC circuit, so you're still going to get an open fault even if it's disabled through the software zone, but it won't tell you, it won't sound the alarms, it won't change the state of the notification circuit. So that's kind of a nice little touch. So you still know if there's a trouble there, so it's not truly disabled, it's just kind of isolated from the alarm section of from the alarm functionality of the panel. Detectors and modules go the same way. It's just more on a more individual basis than zones are. Now, zones are not what you think they are. For those of you who have conventional systems, this is not the same type of zone. This is not an IDC. IDC being initiation device circuit or initiating device circuit. Zones in this case refer to software zones, and software zones allows you to group devices numerically. So if I have a group of pull stations, they're all connected through the SLC, but if I assign them all zone 1, and let's say all of these pull stations are in one area of the building, and I don't want these pull stations to be active during the day when students are in the school building because you don't want them to be pulled or anything, I can group them all in a software zone, and I can disable that software zone, and it disables every device that is labeled for zone 1. Every device that is labeled for zone 1 becomes disabled at that point. Same thing with grouping inputs. It can also, in addition to grouping inputs, it can also correlate inputs with outputs. So let's say you want the panel to have a carbon monoxide feature. There is no built-in carbon monoxide feature within the NFS 2640, but let's say you have a relay module or a control module that you have tripping either a carbon monoxide system. I don't know that if there are any carbon monoxide systems out there, but I'm going to, for the purposes of this video, assume that there is. Let's say you have a carbon monoxide monitoring system, and there's a box that will let somebody know, either emergency services or something like that, that carbon monoxide has entered your building. The fire panel, what you can do from the fire panels, you can have remote CO sensors throughout the building, and you can put those carbon monoxide sensors on a monitor module, and that monitor module, whenever the carbon monoxide alarm trips, it will trip the monitor module, tripping the panel. Now, you don't want a carbon monoxide detector tripping the fire alarm. You want it to trip the carbon monoxide system. So what you're going to do is you're going to give it a different software zone. Let's say you want to program it for software zone 13. Software zone 13, you can then also program that control module for, so that when the carbon monoxide alarm trips, it doesn't trip the NACS and it doesn't trip the fire alarm function of the panel, but it trips that control module, and that control module in turn either trips the signal that you are trying to use to alert people that there's carbon monoxide in the building, or you can use a relay module, and that relay module can trip a carbon monoxide monitoring system. So that's just a little bit on how software zones work. If you'd like a more visual explanation, New Age Server Alarm in his Mini System Test 15, I believe, explained with the whole box situation what that is. So let's move on a little bit. Releasing zones, I'm not going to get into that today because I haven't had much of a chance to play around with those. And I really haven't had much of a chance to play around in general zones, but I'm assuming that this will allow you to label the software zones in the panel. Bell circuit points, obviously I can't show you anything here because it doesn't work. Even if I enter something, you see it says invalid property value. Uh-oh. Oh, I forgot it did that. Sorry about that. We're going to have to reopen Verifier Tools. So I hope it's saved. If it didn't, I'm going to cry. Not that we've made any changes, but other than the panel banner. But you can see this is what Verifier Tools looks like when you fire it up. We're going to go back to use an existing database and demonstration. Okay, it did save. Great. So now let's go back to point programming where we were. Sorry about that. I forgot about the bell circuits acting funny. Now, I did mention that it didn't quite pick up the pull station, so we're going to add the pull station back in, and I'm going to label this FACP pull. Now, the extended just shows you a little bit. It gives you, I think it's like, what, 15, maybe 20 more characters to add to your label. So the label is whenever the device is activated or goes into trouble, that is the description. So you can see it says labels and then custom and extended. Extended extends the label onto the bottom row of the LCD, since there are two 40-character rows for the LCD. And so the module type is going to be monitor. Control is an output type of module. And we are going to set this as pull station since it's an NVG12LX. And flash scan type is manual station. And I'm going to, for control by event, I'm going to set this for zone 4 because that correlates with my logic equations, which I won't go into today either. Logic equations are something I'm still working on how to write those for what purposes I'd like to. I'll make a separate video on that once I've gotten a little bit more advanced with my programming skills. All right, that pretty much clears up all of this. Detectors are the same as programming a module, but it's a detector. And you also have sensitivity settings. And you can check alarm verification participation per device, depending on the area that it's in. All right, so now what we're going to do, let's say we're done with our program, we can now download this back to the panel that we got it from. So what we're going to do again is we are going to unplug our laptop. If you're using a laptop, if you're using a PC, I'm sorry that you have to drag that thing around with you. Now let's plug in the panel, and let's go over to the panel on the taskbar. We're going to do a new session. We're going to save the previous session, and then we're going to click the local network. And once this loads, if it does choose to load, it does. Okay, great. Now let's go to upload/download. And we are going to go over here. We're going to click on this so that it turns green. We're going to then right-click on it, log in, and put in your panel's programming password. Can't stress this enough that it has to be the panel's programming password, not your computer password or whatever password you may think it is. And then we're going to, as you can see, it default selects download to node. And we're going to use the current database, which we, of course, just went over, that it has to be saved in order for you to check that box. And then we just click the download button, and it will give the panel the program. Now that beeping that you heard in the background, that was the 640 beeping. The 640 comes up with a screen that says bootloader, and it says loading, no service, software. It gives you your software revision, and then it gives you the other alternative software identity. And then the bootloader screen, you should start to see what looks like a little loading screen pop up on the 640. And when that bar is complete by percentage, it should say 100%, and then the panel will restart. And now you can see, now you can hear the continuous piezo of the panel restarting, which means I can then unplug the panel from the laptop, and then I can plug the laptop back into the charger. All right, now it's done. All right, and now I have a system initialization trouble. Now I'm going to check to make sure that my pull station is pulling, and indeed it is, which is fantastic. Now I'm going to disable the horn strobe with the ACS, and I will take a video of testing this out in just a moment and clip it onto the rest of this video so that you guys can see what I've done so far. So let's go ahead and save this. All right, let's close Verifier Tools, and I will see you guys when I test out the panel.